Pigeon. Oh, I need a pigeon.
Yeah, that's what you need.
Hi, how are you?
And hello, good day. Welcome back to Pub for Heretics.
Hi,
Today,
how are you?
You're joined by myself, Blake, and
I am James.
today we're going to be talking about Emperor's Children in general. We've just done 2 episodes on Fulgrim, so please go give them a look before you come give this one a look, because everything that's not in this one is going to be in those 2.
Fulgrim. Yep.
Are you ready to take your wargaming to the next level? Look no further than Games Village, your one-stop shop for everything Warhammer and wargaming, right here in Upper Coomera on the beautiful Gold Coast.
Whether you're a seasoned veteran or a new player, Gamers Village has everything you need, from miniatures and paints to rulebooks and accessories. Plus, they've got a fantastic community for players to connect, compete, and grow their skills.
Visit Gamers Village today in Upper Coomera or check them out online for all your wargaming needs. Your next great battle is awaiting. Gamers Village, where your wargaming adventure begins. Yeah, so aside from what I've mentioned in the Fulgrim episodes, what do you know about Emperor's Children?
Well, I mean, from the last episode, they were quite a small army. They started off as 200.
Yep.
Mainly from that there was an issue with the gene seed that they couldn't replenish. So they had to wait for Fulgrim to get back to then be able to slowly be able to replenish.
Mm-hmm.
They're still not up there in the numbers by the sounds of it. They're still...
By the time the Horus Heresy came around, they were as big, if not bigger than the others.
Oh, okay. Okay, so they did eventually
Because obviously,
get to that.
overachievers.
Gotcha. So they did eventually get
There's
there.
no actual exact number on how big the legions were, for like as a general rule, but like you can sort of gauge as to where they were, and there is that number that's floating around. You know, like that the Ultramarines were around 250,000, with Lorgar and the Wordbearers coming close in around 200,000, and the smallest one being probably Raven Guard at 80,000, and that the other legions were somewhere in there in the middle.
Okay.
So so
there's
about there. So Fulgrim and that were closer to the top, if I
Okay.
remember right,
But there's no like official number. I mean,
quote unquote.
yeah.
Yeah.
They might be. Someone will
Some
tell
legions
us.
do, but like again, that's something I've got to try and investigate a little bit more into.
Yeah. But they did, so they did eventually get up there. They got to around the same size.
Same size as the other conquerors. Yeah.
So in saying that, so after the battle, because we spoke about the battle of, what was that planet called?
Where 3 or 5?
The one where, where it was supposed to be 7 against 3,
5.
and then
This one 5.
oh yeah. So after that battle had finished, then I'm guessing this is where we're going to start to take off. But was there a lot of casualty from that, or because they had more of the? Well, they ended up having the upper hand at the end.
The other 3, the Salamanders, Raven Guard, and Iron Hands, did have the upper hand, but that's because the others were retreating and then luring them in, so that the other 4 could come in behind them.
Yeah. So by the
There
end,
was
I know-
casualties, but not
not like
as bad as the other 3.
they didn't go back down to 200 and then have to start like.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because you did say that Raven Guard and
Salamanders,
Iron Hands, they did go down quite a lot.
Quite a lot, to the point where they didn't play a huge role in the rest of the Horus Heresy.
Yeah. Okay.
They did a lot of important things, don't get me wrong, but nowhere near as like being contenders to stop the other legions.
Yeah, because they were such a. I mean,
Important things, don't get me wrong.
yeah.
But not like outright war and stopping the others.
If you think about it as well, they would have had to have done such a massive job in that battle. Otherwise, they would have just got a clean wiped out.
Mhm.
Like, I mean, you're going up against 7 odd.
Those 3 legions ended up forming what's called the Shattered Legions, and then they ended up like being like a band of not mercenaries, but more like a band of brothers situation, where you had Salamanders working with Raven Guard, and then Raven Guard working with Iron Hands, and all 3 of them were on scattered ships. And there's a really cool storyline following and Sharakin, who's a Raven Guard. He's with a ship full of Iron Hands crew and a Salamander's apothecary, and it's a great storyline.
Okay, so they do end up.
But they're just like survivors.
Because I do know at the time of recording, they've like what Adepticon was like a week ago or 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And at the end of that, they did announce like what's coming next. And one of those was the Salamanders was one of them.
Salamanders and Imperial Fists.
And if it's, what was the third one? There was
Votan.
Votan, yeah.
And then Raven Guard.
Raven Guard will be. But Salamanders is getting like a refresh. So would that mean that the Salamanders Primarch?
Don't know.
Okay.
Nobody knows. A lot of people are saying Russ. A lot of people are saying a Vulcan. But that's about it.
Okay. I mean,
but also as well, it's hard to gauge because Fulgrim just came out, so it's going to be a while before they bring out another one.
Another Primarch, yeah. I mean, Salamanders is one that I am probably more interested in as far as loyalists, not traitors. One of the most like that I'm interested in.
More excited about. Yeah, fair.
Because like one, they're like fire and dragons and all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
It'd be between them and the wolves.
Oh yeah, Space Wolves.
Space Wolves. Thinking Lunar Wolves, and I'm like, no, that's wrong. Space Wolves. They are probably the two.
Oh well, that's good because Wolves just got their refresh and Salamanders are going to get theirs.
And
so let's see what they get.
Fingers crossed, we may be able to get a Space Wolves box. I'm still working on it. I don't know that Blake even knows this, but we may be able to get a Space Wolves box.
We'll see how we go.
We'll
but anyways,
yeah.
This is the Emperor's Children episode.
Yes.
Okay. So, the Third Legion were created the same time as the others. And the parts of Europa, aka Europe, this is before, when the Primarchs were created.
Yep.
And they just got yeeted into the warp.
Yep.
The noble families that rebelled against the Emperor had sworn fealty to him and then offered up their sons to the Emperor for the Third Legion. So that's why the Legion has that kind of noble-esque aesthetic. Because literally they're full of private schoolboys.
Oh.
Because they're literally full of nobles.
Yeah. Okay. That does make a lot more sense now. Mm-hmm. Okay. So they're the preppy boys.
The prep boys, yeah.
Ah.
So these Marines were really good at leading others.
Yep.
Naturally. Because of their noble background, they were also great at leading lesser troops.
Okay.
Because they're good at being the bosses.
Yeah.
So after some time, though, the Emperor was holding a ceremony on a place called Proxima for having defeated them. But the problem is that this was also a trap. And the Emperor was surrounded with his custodian guard and the Third Legion.
Yep.
Well, members of the Third Legion.
Yep.
The Custodes and all of that were fighting against the insurrectionists. The Emperor was actually wounded by a powerful vortex weapon that the insurrectionists have. But the Third Legion basically threw themselves against the enemies and gave Big E just enough time to wipe them all out.
Gotcha. Okay.
So I would say they got close, but if it wasn't for the Third Legion, they might have actually done something.
Wow.
Because of this and the eventual speech that Fulgrim gave, the one I told you about in the last episode.
Yep.
This is what awarded them the Palatine Aquila.
Okay.
This is what got them that.
This is what
the Emperor's
got them,
heraldry.
Yeah.
And then after that, they sort of became like the face men for the Emperor. This is where they became the diplomats.
Yeah.
So because of the honor of what they've done.
Yep.
And also wearing the Palatine Aquila also comes with some similar responsibilities.
And it's interesting because like you would just think the way, especially the way, and this is a bit meta, but the way that GW like heavily pushes Ultramarines, you would think they would be the prep boys.
Being the, well,
like they're
some of them are probably.
Yeah, but you would think that like Guilliman and the Ultramarines would be the ones that are like, even like the Custodes, like they would be like the front and center. Like, this is my best army. Like, this is the one that we push the most.
Yeah.
And yet it's really the one that seems to be, it's taken so long for them to get a refresh. Like you would think that Emperor's Children would have gotten.
Well, it's because they're chaos corrupted in this timeline.
Yeah, but it's just interesting, like thinking about like the meta, like what GW think about.
Yeah, because you look at this and you're like, what? That just doesn't make sense.
As well as like in the story, like it seems like in the story, and I haven't heard all the stories of everything, but it just seems like Fulgrim and the Emperor's Children have like a big part to play in a lot of the lore.
They do.
When it comes to
Everything.
Warhammer. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and further on to that point as well. But then this is where that great calamity happened for the Third Legion. So the gene seed repositories were on their way from Luna all the way to Earth, because like Luna being the moon and on the way to Earth.
Yeah.
It was either destroyed, shot down by rebels, or it was crashed and burned before it could leave the port, or it just disappeared. We don't actually know what happened to their gene seed repositories. Nobody knows. That's all I could find. It was either one or the other, but it might have been chaos bullshittery going on.
I was just going to say, like, it seems like they leave it open.
It gets worse.
Like, they leave it open enough that, like, in the future, they could recall back on that and there could be some chaos god.
Exactly.
Like,
listen to this.
They could have opened up a...
This also goes into this as well. This was a severe blow for the Third Legion. Their gene seed was not all lost because of how the progenoid glands work. They can replicate themselves.
Yeah.
Like, and they could farm themselves eventually. But this is a very slow process.
Yep.
And you can't always reclaim the bodies of your dead soldiers because of how battle works.
I'm just like thinking, like, so much information.
Yeah. That's okay.
But could it have been
See?
that the Chaos Gods
Mm-hmm.
took the gene seeds and that's how they were able to work out which armies were best to corrupt?
They would have known that regardless. They
Okay.
don't need they don't need physical samples to know that kind of stuff.
I'm just thinking, like, you would think like a Chaos God would be better to go after someone like the Ultramarines and Guilliman, like, because of their size and their their attributes. Like, they would be the ones to corrupt.
I would say look at it from the other way around, that maybe creating these circumstances made Fulgrim more susceptible to chaos change.
True.
So by creating these little incidences, forming into this person that made him able to be susceptible.
Yeah. It's just really
Because
interesting thinking.
What happened next was that even though this is a severe blow, they were still able to, like, the Legion was still alive for the most part.
Yep.
A fast-acting blight infected several of the vaults on Terra, holding their gene seed there. So the Emperor had to step in himself and stop the blight with his technological genius prowess.
Yep.
But this destroyed what was ever left of the gene seed reserves. Whilst other legions were growing, but they were dying, they were dwindling.
Yeah.
Without their Primarch, they couldn't do anything.
Yeah.
So
there's not someone to feed.
What else creates blights or disease?
I'm thinking like orcs, like,
No.
because they're mushrooms. But
Go Chaos.
Papa Nurgle.
Yeah, Papa Nurgle. So think about that for a minute. Two strangely coincidental moments have now made the Third Legion ripe for the picking. Because something they either destroyed or disappeared the gene seed and then infected the rest of it.
I mean, it just has to be.
There's no evidence.
I know there's no evidence,
But
like it's such a like.
It's such a fuck around, isn't it?
But it's so easy that it could be them. Like the Chaos Gods, like this is them like starting how they end up taking control of half the Primarchs and getting their like,
because some of the other legions had gene seed problems on their own, but not two in a row.
Yeah,
not two unfortunate circumstances like this. So, but the thing is that even though Fabius Bile was one of the remaining 200, he was trying to figure out, because he's an apothecarian.
Yeah.
He was trying to figure out like how we can reverse this disease, this apparent infection in our gene seed. But they just kept losing more and more men to the fighting, and the third's doom was just inevitable.
Yeah.
Until they found Fulgrim. Now, through his speech, he gave the remaining 200 about their service on Proxima.
Yep.
The Emperor then gave his legion the Aquila to wear. And we were talking about in the last part 1 episode where about this is probably where the setting of expectations became the downfall.
Yeah.
Now, many friendships were formed over the next century, but mainly it was between the Lunar Wolves and the Iron Hands with the Emperor's children.
His children. Yep.
And because if the Primarchs are good friends, and therefore the Legion usually follows suit.
Follows. Yep.
But the thing is that classism started to emerge between the sons of Chemos and the sons of Europa. Because you got to remember, Europa are the noble families.
Yep.
And Chemos were seen as like dregs from a backwater planet.
Well, they were almost like the slaves. Like they were like they were miners,
work slaves. Yeah.
Yeah, they were. So yeah, it is literally the
So imagine what like a higher class and a lower class person
Yeah.
would have in common.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the remaining 200 from Europa are seen as like these heroes, these revered veterans.
They had the sigil, like they had the
Yeah, they earned the glory.
They earned the
and
glory,
then
yeah.
all these newcomers haven't yet.
yeah.
So yeah. Fulgrim also believed highly in the Remembrancer Order. Do you know what Remembrancers are? Do you remember that?
You have to remind. Yeah, I do.
I have to
vaguely.
remind you to remember.
Yeah, no, I know that there was something in the Space Marine 2 game about, wasn't it? Remembrance?
No.
No. Okay.
So
You'll have to
remembrances during the Horus Heresy. Before the Horus Heresy, during the Great Crusade, when the Emperor had sent off the Great Crusade to try and find all of his sons and connect all of humanity. He also created what's called the Remembrancer Order, where it was basically journalists, poets, authors, musicians, artists of all types, photographers, that kind of crap, and they were meant to document the Great Crusade and then document it as a pivotal point in not just human history, but the galaxy's history.
Yeah.
So it was meant to be like, people taking pictures of this storming battle, people doing artworks of when this Primarch, and that kind of stuff, and doing stories and poetry. Like, that's what they were for.
So it was basically like so that they could go.
The people with all the art degrees could go.
Yeah, but then they could go back to like Terra or they could even go to new planets and be like, look, this is what we've done.
Yeah.
Like we've like fought against orcs and whatever, you know, and shown like if you join us, you will have this army behind you, sort of thing. So it's more like propaganda. Like
That's exactly what. No, you're hit the money on there. That's exactly what it was.
it's a propaganda sort of play.
Look at all the great things.
Yeah,
we've done,
look
kind
at
of
what the emperor is like in charge of, and look at them all working together. Now, if you work together with us, you'll have this power behind you.
thing. Exactly. But it's like also to show off the majesty of the emperor and his sons in Space Marines.
So much for
Fulgrim.
against religion.
Well, it's not so much a religion. You don't have to be an artistic person to be religious.
Oh no, but I just mean like follow this man that has like
Well, it's meant to be like showing larger than life.
yeah like a god.
Fair enough. So yeah, the funny thing is as well is that Fulgrim believed that like art, poverty, music were paramount to creating a perfect society.
Yeah.
Especially after living on Chemos.
Yeah.
Other Primarchs did not follow this. They did not care for remembrances and thought it was a distraction from what was important. So obviously Ferrus, Leman Russ, Dawn to a degree, like a bunch of the others just didn't appreciate it as much as Fulgrim did. So it's like some despised, tolerated, or refused them altogether. But Fulgrim embraced them, and not only that, he wanted the best of them on his ship, typically.
Yeah.
To the point where he actually sacrificed a part of his ship, and it was called the Lafanice, where it was like a lovely like theater, like so just so these remembrances could live out their greatest bohemian like dream, where like have all these beautiful artists and all these people creating beautiful pieces of art, and getting drunk and then just having spirited debates. Like a good time was had by all.
And orgies.
that comes later. But yes, he embraced that. And this episode is more about like informing how the rest of the Legion operates.
Yeah.
Because that's the reason why we went from the Primarch to the Legion, is because most times the Legion's informed by the Primarch.
Yeah.
So this is just all the information that I didn't, say in the first episode.
Yeah.
So the Legion tends to have like victory feasts before they actually have started the battle, just to prove their overconfidence and their arrogance.
Yeah, we've already won the battle. It's
May
just
as
a
well.
formality.
Yeah, at this point, of just waging the war is the formality.
Yeah.
Yes, and you remember those Brotherhood lodges that Erebus and Lorgar instilled in each?
Yep.
And then they couldn't install it in the Lion because they already had a Brotherhood?
Yeah.
So Fulgrim and the Emperor's Children did have the lodges, but the funny thing is that they were so elitist about it that only the officers and the commanders could actually join it.
Oh, so not even the
Not even the
like the army, like the normal.
the whole point of the lodge was
Yeah.
to have like they have no chain of command, and that a private can talk to an officer, like that kind of thing.
But in saying that, you can't join because
Yeah.
you're not up here with us.
I just find it that they also
that's
were
very-
elitist about everything in
That's
that.
very funny.
Yeah, to the point where even Fulgrim was part of it.
Yeah.
So the downfall of this legion became quite apparent when they encountered the Leia, as we mentioned before. And as I mentioned as well, that the Third Legion fought hard against them, but they also felt that because Fulgrim wanted to prove himself to his brothers, he kind of threw them against the Leia, and there was massive casualties.
Yeah.
And a lot of Marines died. And then they entered the Leia Temple. This is where everything started to diverge,
Okay.
and different trains of thought and inspiration began to happen. Fabius Bile, the apothecary, that he's gonna have his own episode one day, because he's so much to talk about, was dissecting the Leia bodies and realized that each of the Leia were modifying themselves to make them more perfect, like themselves.
Yeah.
Fabius pushed that they should begin doing experiments on themselves and working on the gene seed to improve it. Fulgrim nearly killed Fabius at the idea that, you can't really perfect perfection, if you know what I mean.
He's already
Like,
perfect.
the Emperor created us.
Yeah.
We are perfect.
We're perfect.
Yeah. So he was, of course, none too happy about that. But the thing is that Fabius then pushed that because we are the children of the Emperor, we have to find our own steps, and we have to see if we can push perfection even further.
Yeah.
And that kind of did win over Fulgrim a little bit more, and he's like, I give you sanction to do these experiments.
Yeah.
He did. Soon enough, there became like a distinction between those Marines and remembrances that went to the Leia Temple and those that didn't. The Fulgrim book goes through it quite beautifully, where there's stories of Marines that were in the temple, and then some were shot down in the Thunderhawks and didn't get the chance to go into the Leia Temple.
Yeah.
And they weren't able to visit it. And then remembrances that did go to the temple, and then there's ones that didn't.
Yeah.
So yes, get more into that in a second. Fabius then came out with a new set of stimulant drugs to be given to the Marines to improve their performance.
Here comes the drugs part of the sex, drugs, and rock and roll.
Yes. But what was not made aware to the Marines is that this was made from Leia adrenal glands and organs.
Oh,
So they were literally putting in
Xenos.
drugs into their body,
Jesus.
which already is a big no-no, a huge no-no,
Yeah.
but he was still doing it. So the divide between all these Marines became even bigger and bigger between those that took the drugs because FOMO, fear of missing out, and then ones that also felt like ashamed because they wanted to prove themselves in battle, but they couldn't. And then there's the ones that said, no, the Emperor's already made us perfect, so we're
Why are we
fine the way
doing-
we are.
Yeah.
There's no point fixing what isn't broken.
Yeah.
The Marines that did take the drugs and that did attend the Leia Temple became more and more obsessed with the idea of becoming better through art and war. Like, one was just chasing down philosophers and their ideals of perfection and how they chased it. And Eidolon, who is not Fulgrim's first captain or like commander or anything like that, but he's close to it. He's called the Aura Kama. He's basically Fulgrim's hammer, essentially, is the best way of putting it. He's like, his like first shot off the bow kind of guy.
Yep.
He stepped forward to Fabius saying he wanted to be stronger. So Fabius implanted a sonic weapon in his throat that he found through the layer. And then Eidolon's like, wait. He's strapped to a table. He's like, wait, you're going to be putting Xenos tech in me? I don't want this.
Yeah.
And Fabius is like, oh, we're too late. I'm so sorry. And then he ended up being fitted with this thing that kind of gave him like Black Canary Banshee scream.
Is this the start of the Noise Marines?
Maybe. And then his whole company decided to do it,
Yep.
follow his suit. And just to point out as well, the remembrances in this legion were also becoming more and more decrepit and depraved.
Yep.
Thanks to the power of Slaanesh.
Yeah. Praise Slaanesh.
There's this whole book is a beautiful, like, tragic story about 3 remembrances: a woman named Serena, a guy named Ostian, and Bekwa Kinska. So Serena is a painter, Ostian is a sculptor, and then Bekwa is a composer. Serena was already not feeling confident in her skills and was constantly frustrated that she couldn't live up to her expectations.
Yep.
And then it just goes through a beautifully horrible story about her secretly being in love with Ostian. And then Ostian was also in love with her, but they never expressed it.
Jeez.
She went down to the temple. He didn't. And then when she came back, she was trying to do a portrait of Fulgrim that he commissioned for her to do.
Yep.
And she was one of the finest painters in the Imperium.
Yep.
And she just couldn't get it. She was succumbing more and more to this idea that this needed to be perfect. And even before she went to the temple, she would sometimes like stab herself because she was just frustrated, like the frustrated artist type. She was annoyed and upset with herself that she couldn't get it right.
Yep.
And then she eventually stabbed herself one day with a pen and then realized that this red is perfect. So she mixed her blood in with the paint because it made the perfect red for Fulgrim's cape or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And then she used her own tears because it was the perfect way to show off the pearlescent of his hair.
Yeah.
And then her waist made the deepest of blacks and browns. So she literally put herself into the painting.
Yeah.
And this is also her when she was chasing these pleasures and these sensations. It got so bad to the point where she was like, it doesn't stay perfect. It doesn't stay right. And then she would go to the Lafanice, the theater, and lure other remembrances back to her room.
Yep.
And Dexter them.
Yep. Take parts of them.
Yeah. And then use their bodies essentially to create the artwork.
Wow.
And yeah, so this whole time though, Ostian, he's the only one that's being sane at this point, and it's interesting seeing it from his point of view because he's trying to help her.
Yeah.
And then because he just genuinely loves this girl.
Yeah.
And there's like these whole debates about love and perfection and talent and skill, and it's just back and forth. And she pushes him away because she's like, I want you to leave, Ostian. He's like, why? She's like, I don't know what I'm going to do. Because she's literally being corrupted.
Yeah.
Because that's the thing about corruption. It's not tapping into something that's not there. It's tapping into something that's already there.
Yeah.
That's how corruption works.
So she doesn't know
what she'd do.
Exactly. And because she loved him so much, she didn't want to hurt him, I'm guessing.
She then created a grotesque painting of Fulgrim.
Oh.
This is the painting that Fulgrim gets trapped in.
Oh.
Created by Serena.
Gotcha.
Which
eventually the demon ends up getting trapped in.
Yeah, eventually. Ostian has got this perfect marble sculpture, and he's creating the Emperor in the image because he's like perfect marble, perfect figure to be created out of. And then I'm not going to go into it now because I think this genuinely either deserves its own episode or we're going to go through the book. But Fulgrim comes to Ostian and is like, I've been trying to do these marble artworks, but I just can't get them right. There's something wrong. I'm doing them of all my captains, but there's just nothing there that I can feel. And then Ostian's just like, yes, because I can see that there's no life to it. And he's like, what do you mean? He's like, they're too perfect. What do you mean too perfect? There's no such thing as too perfect. And he's like, you've technically created it right, but the problem is that it's through imperfection that creates that level of
Yeah.
connection. It's how we as humans are able to like connect to an artwork because it's not perfect.
Yeah.
And then he's like, so what, you're saying your artwork is imperfect? And this is also when he's got the Leia blade and he's starting to get corrupted as well and becoming more and more petty.
Yeah.
And he's just like, so he's like being a bit venomous about it.
Yeah.
And he's like, so what you're saying is that your stuff is imperfect. And he's like, yes, if I was chasing perfection, nothing would get done.
Done. Yeah.
And Ostian has like a really healthy view of it, but Fulgrim just can't compare it. And he does that typical shit where he's just like, you know what, fine. You are the expert. I will never lay chisel to marble again. Just like, this is clearly wasting my time. And Ostian's like, no, that's not what I meant. It's like, no, clearly no. I will do no more. I will leave you to your imperfect work.
Yeah.
And that's actually pretty verbatim. That's actually how it goes.
I can see it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Ostian's just like sitting there dumbfounded, like,
I was just trying to help you work out your starving artist's, perspective. And yeah.
But that's a reoccurring thing that does happen does pop up every now and again, is the Primarchs are not human. Like, they are human in technical speak, but when it comes to connecting to that part of humanity, most of them don't get it.
Yeah, because they weren't.
Either they weren't raised, or they're just, because they're so removed genetically speaking, it just doesn't click.
It's almost like if you have oh my god, the word has escaped my brain. Like if you have not Asperger's, epilepsy, but you can't you don't have the feeling aspect of it. Like you can't see other people's emotions. Like it's almost
No,
like
that's Asperger's.
Oh, is it Asperger's?
Epilepsy is bright lights.
Not epilepsy, Asperger's. Yeah, where you can't
Asperger's with, depending on autism, depending on the spectrum.
Yeah.
Yeah, where you just don't understand sarcasm, or you don't understand people's emotions.
It's like that.
But that's
part.
also sociopathy and psychopathy.
Yeah, but that it's almost like that part of their brain is firing. Like that's the part that's active.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or they're just here's the thing. That's only some of the Primarchs. Like some Primarchs, like Vulcan, Gilliman, Jagatai Khan, they do understand that humanity part, the human emotions. But it's also a matter of it's different things. It's nature and nurture. It's how they were raised. It's the planet that they landed on, the culture they grew up in. Because the ones that were more family centric were the ones that ended up being the most humanized.
Yeah.
Dawn is as well. Russ to a degree, I would say. Yeah. So, and even some of the trader Primarchs understand that, but it's just
even empathy.
There's a disconnect in the empathy. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then Beck Wilkinski is being seen every now and again in the book as a poet, mad. She's manically trying to, because the temple, when they were inside of it, every time it wasn't silent, it was giving off these weird vibrations of music and noise, and she was trying to recreate it.
Okay.
And we'll get to those in a second.
Yep.
There were moments where now Fulgrim, listening to the voice in his head, was leaving his men in battle and abandoning regiments.
Yep.
Of intentionally ones that he did not like.
Okay.
For example, Saul Tarvitz and Lucius come to the rescue of Solomon, and then all they hear over the Vox is when he finds out, Fulgrim just going, "Oh, what a shame." Because you know what happened next? Literally a few hours later, they go to Isfahan 3.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. All the loyalist elements of all 4 legions were sent down to the planet to retake it in the name of the Emperor. But Saul Tarvitz, the captain we were talking about, figured out what was about to happen and raced down to the planet to warn the other legionnaires. And then they were able to get Garrow and a couple of the remembrances, none of the other 3, but a couple of other remembrances on Horus's ship, back to Terra to explain what happened with the betrayal.
Yep.
And then Tarvitz got to the Legionnaires and told them all to go underground or seek cover because you're about to get bombed to hell.
Yeah.
12 billion civilians were killed in this bombing run. The psychic feedback from that many deaths eclipsed to the Astronomicon for a moment.
Yeah.
That's how potent it was when that many people die in one go.
All at once, yeah.
So Saul Tarvitz of the Emperor's Children, Gabriel Loken, and Tormageddon, two main characters from the Horus, from Horus's Legion, the Sons of Horus.
Yeah.
If there was a main character for the Horus Heresy, Loken would be one of them.
Oh, right.
Because the first 3 books are from his perspective.
Okay.
So Loken is actually a really G of a character. He's really cool. They all rally towards those 3, and they fight back against the traitors. This was only meant to be a quick bombing run, and then they were meant to bugger off to Isfahan 5 waiting.
5, yeah.
Stop them for 3 months, which is just amazing to me.
Wow.
So Tarvitz, Loken, Tormageddon were able to stop them and stop Horus long enough for Garrow to get back to Earth until they rebombed the planet. Now, this is where I'm going to get you to watch the video that I just sent you, because this is one of the most heartbreaking things from any of the books I've ever read or listened to. This is an excerpt from the audiobook Galaxy in Flames. This is the 3rd book in the Horus Heresy, and this is towards the end of the massacre. So,
All right.
100 of Tarvitz's loyalists remained. They were the only survivors of their glorious last stand, and he had gathered them in the remains of the War Singer's temple. Sons of Horus, Emperor's children, and even a few lost-looking world-eaters. Tarvitz noticed that there were no Death Guard in their numbers, thinking that perhaps a few had survived Mortarian's scouring of the trenches, but knowing that they might as well have been on the other side of Isfahan 3. This was the end. They all knew it, but none of them gave voice to that fact. He knew all their names now. Before, they had just been grime-streaked faces among the endless days and nights of battle. But now they were brothers, men he would die with in honor. Flashes of explosions bloomed in the city's north. Shooting stars punched through the dark clouds overhead, scorching holes through which the glimmering stars could be seen. The stars shone down on the coral city in time to watch the city die. "Did we hurt them, Captain?" asked Solothurn. "Did this mean anything?" Tarvitz thought for a moment before replying. "Yes," he said. "We hurt them here. They'll remember this." A bomb slammed into the presenter's palace, finally blasting what little remained of its great stone flower into flame and shards of granite.
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It's one of the sadder moments
They were
where
pretty doomed.
pretty
Like,
doomed, yeah.
But they knew they were doomed.
Yeah, Sons of Horus, Emperor's Children, and the few lost-looking world eaters really hurt me.
Yeah.
Like, hurts you more than I think it does. And then his commander just says, "Did we hurt them?
Yeah.
Did this mean anything?" As the bombs are flying and the city is blowing up, and Tarvitz says, "Yes, we did something here."
Yeah.
And then,
Boom. Death.
it's sad. Like, even when Gilliman later found out that the loyalists were bombed at Isfahan 3, apparently he cried. He was
Yeah.
upset at the idea of so many loyalist arties dying.
Dying. Yeah. And
That's
Yeah.
why Saul Tarvitz is my favorite Emperor's Children.
yeah.
He takes command and he was not meant to. They only ever saw him as a line officer and nothing more.
Yeah.
Because obviously the Camosian classism going on and that he was never going to be up to scratch, but he did the impossible against the War Master.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I mean, that's why he was the War Master. Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
Exactly. So after Isfahan, the Emperor's Children, the traitorous ones,
Yep.
went to get ready for at Isfahan 5 for the Loyalist revenge fleet that was going to come.
Yep.
This is the stuff I didn't want to mention in the last episode because it's more important in this one because it's how the Legion turned.
Yeah. Okay.
The Remembrancer by the name of Bekwa Kinska, the one that was the composer,
Yep.
recreated the Temple of the Lair
Oh,
on the ship for one great big production and symphony for in the Primarch's name.
wow. Okay.
She then also created new technology for new instruments to recreate some of the music.
Okay.
It was her purest idea of trying to be her trying to be the best and trying to be the best, because she was also a bit of a where's the red button? She was a bit of a and tried getting with Ostian
Oh,
and like tried to like look at this planet, like being taken over is just gets the juices going, doesn't it? and then was like to Ostian, try and take me now on this bridge. And Ostian's like, no, thank you. Sorry, I've got to go by. And
she was the.
which one is it? No one got time for that.
Oh, she was the.
Never mind, don't worry.
Ain't nobody got time for that.
Yeah, Ostian, and then he dipped out of there, and that insulted Becwa, and she was petty, and that was the reason why Ostian didn't go to the Lair Temple, was because she knocked him off the list.
Wow.
So that's why he didn't get corrupted, but Serena did.
Yeah.
It was also a matter of he didn't want to be with Becwa, but he also loved Serena.
Yeah.
So the idea of being rejected, taking that, and then being in the Lair Temple, like this idea of her trying to achieve that level of being seductive, and then also that level of like music, trying to be the best at each and every single one, like every line, every musical note has to be perfect, made her a perfect prime candidate of being corrupted.
Yeah.
So,
She was the. We've had the drugs. She's the sex.
sex and music.
Oh, and the rock and roll.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So she ended up composing a beautiful musical piece for Fulgrim in the Lafanice.
Yep.
And all the Marines and all the remembrances, a lot of the remembrances as well didn't know what was going on with Isfan 3. Didn't know what happened.
Okay.
So a lot of them attended Lafanice, pretty much everybody, and then Fulgrim had his own box.
Yep.
With Julius, his first commander, first captain, whatever. And yeah, to recreate the sounds that she heard in the Lafanice Temple, like I said, she created new instruments.
Yep.
And she then, boom, began a beautiful chorus of music. And the whole time, she's like a woman possessed, like leading her orchestra. And like it'll go from the audience loving her to hating her to weeping to laughing. Like this music was just going through the entire emotional spectrum the whole way through.
Yep.
Some Marines, though, had the fingers in their ears and tried leaving. And then the other Marines beat them to death.
So
Because how dare you leave?
So they've started to be corrupted, like through the music.
And then she just maniacally kept doing it, just kept going and just kept going, and the music was reaching the crescendo, and then the music, her instruments, her singers turned into demonettes and then began slaughtering the audience.
What?
And the other Marines, the ones that had the implants in their throat, looked on with panic in their eyes as their jaws descended, and then they just were like
Speakers.
the speakers almost.
Yeah.
And then the audience, the human audience, engaged in of all types, of all the carnal pleasures you can
All
think of.
the beeps.
All the beeps. And then all the Marines engaged in massive amounts of slaughter and just began killing everybody. And on top of that, the demonette that was one of her singers came over and killed Becwa, releasing her soul. And then the other Marines, they were like, no, the music has to keep going. And the Marines jumped onto the stage and grabbed these instruments that were created by Becwa and then just started playing it. They didn't know what they were doing, but they were playing it.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, boom, the birth of the Noise Marines. This is the first Noise Marines.
And Fulgrim's watching all of this.
Fulgrim's watching all of this. Julius is like manically crying next to him. He's like, and then he looks over to the Primarch, and the Primarch is like, don't they make such lovely music, my sons? See what I mean?
Yeah, this is okay. So did Julius not end up turning?
Oh no, he did. He did. He ended up becoming the leader of the Noise Marines.
Oh,
Yes. As far as I remember, don't quote me on that, but that's what I read somewhere.
I thought it was the Lord.
Lord Cacophony?
Yeah, I thought that was.
That's what the Noise Marines are as a group. They are the Cacophony. And then there's a Lord Cacophony, which can lead a unit.
Okay.
But Julius became the leader of them.
The leader. Okay.
And this was known as the Morvigula. I might be mispronouncing that, but that's what it's called. So the Morvigula. There's different ways of pronouncing it that I've heard. But yes, this was the point in which the Emperor's children had now fully, wholly given themselves over to Slaanesh.
Yep. Does Slaanesh ever like show her itself?
No, because the gods themselves don't have true forms.
Oh, that's right. I do remember.
They're more or less like a force, like gravity.
Because I remember,
Like there's no actual proper, as far as I'm aware.
there's
There's a couple of official images of them, but like again, it's like trying to, not to get religious, but it is like trying to draw a picture of what you think
Yeah.
God looks like,
isn't it the
or what he would look like.
isn't is it Korn? Is like the demon rabbit?
Yes,
Yeah.
that's the joke that we made about.
Yeah,
the
yeah. I
Yeah.
vaguely remember.
As far as I'm aware, that's the only official image of Korn. But like again, it's like it's trying to like draw an interpretation of a feeling
yeah,
of a force itself. Like try and draw a picture of gravity.
yeah.
You can draw the effects, but you can't actually draw what it looks
gravity.
like.
Yeah,
But like I'm sure they could take forms if they wanted to and have done in the past. But again, that's also ambiguous.
I suppose they don't need to if they work through their Primarch.
Exactly. They work through champions and they work through demons. So the way that I view it as is that the way that they manifest themselves through their underlings, like the demons, the lesser demons, the Primarchs and the Noise Marines and all that kind of stuff, that's how I think it's like their aspects of them.
Yeah,
And then when you combine that all together, you actually get a very close image of what they all look
of what
like.
they would be. Yep.
I've got the headcanon in my idea that Slaanesh kind of has more Eldar look to them.
I mean, I've seen
That's how they were
images.
born, by the deaths of so many, the pleasure and death of all these Eldar. So I always assumed that the Slaanesh, if they did take a form, it would be very Eldar-esque.
Oh, okay. Because there is that image. It's not. I don't know if it's like an official image, but I've seen like images of Slaanesh, and Slaanesh does look very
Like a woman, yeah.
Yeah, Eldar sort of like.
Yeah. And that's fine. Like everybody has that interpretation of her and not of her, him, them. I like. Again, that's also ambiguous because, she who thirsts, but is also known as the Prince of Pleasure.
Yeah.
So it is what it is. But like, again, if however you picture them is probably also accurate because they don't have an image. Anyways, so yes, the Noise Marines were unleashed on Isstvan 5 massacre. This is when the other loyalist legions were able to fully see the corruption of chaos.
I can just see like them coming to like Isstvan 5 and being like from Mad Max, that scene where they're coming in, they've got the dude with the guitar, like with the big flame coming out the side of it.
And then
like,
they seal that,
That's what it like.
And then them using sonic weapons. And then on top of that, you've also got word bearers that were turning full demon corruption as well. So like not just Emperor's children, but like a couple of the other members of the other legions were also chaos converted as well. So skipping all of that because at that point, it is what it is throughout the rest of the Horus Heresy, Siege of Terror. It's just, they were just chasing their pleasures. They were the ones that were killing the populace of Terra, basically using the noise guns, the noise machines to turn people into dust and snorting them essentially, just killing anybody and everybody they could see. After the Horus Heresy, they participated in what was called the Legion Wars, or also known as the Slave Wars, because in the Eye of Terror and near the Eye of Terror there were no resources because they were being scoured by the Loyalists. So they were all fighting each other. Warbands were fighting each other for over resources.
Yep.
The Emperor's children then pretty much corralled around Fabius Bile because he was the only one of the higher echelon of their hierarchy that hadn't lost his fucking mind.
Yeah.
But then the thing is that he stole Horus's body and cloned him.
Oh, yes. I remember this.
Yeah, you remember this? Yeah.
And then he ends up putting the claw. It's
He
him.
cloned Fulgrim and he cloned Horus.
Yeah, but isn't it him that ends up putting the...
Fabius File didn't do anything like that. Abaddon did.
Oh, I thought it was... I know Abaddon put the claw of Horus, but I thought it was Fabius.
He's got the claw of the War Master.
Yeah, but
and-
I thought it was Fabius that actually put it on his arm.
No, I haven't. It's one of the first books, I think, in the Black Legion trilogy that I haven't read, but I want to because it's really good.
Yeah.
But yeah, so obviously this world belonged to the Emperor's children, but the Black Legion, the newly formed Black Legion came in, messed them up.
Yeah.
And this was the last time that the Legion was basically assembled.
Okay.
Abaddon does not want the Third Legion to reassemble because that would be a contender for his strength. Abaddon has to be the one that is the War Master. He has to be the strongest person. So he will actually instigate fights between warbands that are getting too big for themselves, just so that way he can pick the actual warriors that survive and absorb them into his army.
The Black Legion. Yep.
Yes, so he wants them to keep being fractured.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because the more they're fractured, the more he can then
control them, and he
from-
can be the big, and nobody will mess with him. But yeah,
And
like I
nobody
said,
should, because Abaddon.
but yeah, final notes is it's hard to maintain a crew on an Emperor's Children ship because you're trying to discipline the undisciplined,
Yeah.
or the undisciplinable, and again, this is where Chaos is better in terms of flavor, because you could have one warband over here, and if you tell me that this warband is obsessed with chasing after beautiful music and they're very noise marine based, totally lore accurate. If you want to talk about this one here that stays closer to the old themes and the aesthetic of the old days, and that they want the Legion to reform and, focus more on being a united front, totally lore accurate. If you want to see one that's just about pure debauchery, have nothing but a slave army,
Demon.
and there's only like 5 Marines.
Yeah.
That's doable. That's possible. Like, it's just because like there's so many divergent paths with Chaos that's what makes it more interesting.
Yeah. I'm Chaos through and through.
Like, yeah. So like, for example, in Renegade's Lord of Excess, it's a really good story. It follows this guy named Xanatine, I believe it is, and he takes over a world that was about to be taken over by the Gene Stealers, and he takes over this entire world that was like focused on beauty, and he's like, I'm going to do a better job than Fulgrim, and I'm going to lead this world. And it didn't work out well.
Yep.
But like, he had a noise marine who had his own orchestra, and then he had like a demon lord sorcerer that was also a collector, and that would throw out demons like pokeballs. And then he's got like a quartermaster who was a terminator, like that kind of thing. Like, you can make your own warband, and it looks pretty cool. And there's another guy in here that like had dripping molten on his face, which were the remnants of his enemy's war gear, and put it over his bare head so he'd make like this beautiful like molten scarred head.
Oh, wow.
Like, you can get messed up as much as you want with Emperor's Children. It would be lore accurate.
Speaking of messed up, I do want to buy, now that they've like announced that they're doing Noise Marines and the other two, whatever they're called, I can't remember. I do want to buy
Tormentors and Infractors.
Tormentors and Infractors. I do want to buy a set of Tormentors or Infractors because as far as the box is concerned, I'm doing lore accuracy, but I do want to make one Legion, and I want to make them all like the different hellscapes from Hellraiser. So like, I want to get like, the dude that has like the mouth like a jar.
Yeah.
I want to get like Pinhead, and like I want to like kit
There's
bash.
so much variety and
Yeah.
so much flavor. You can do whatever you want with them.
And I think that's why it's it's the perfect army to do the
Whatever you
real
want.
versus fake, what we're doing, what
Yeah.
we're in the middle of doing, because there is just so much you can do, like as far as kit bashing is concerned, and it's lore accurate.
And it's also it doesn't have to be lore accurate. Whatever you do with your models is your business.
It's your plastic.
Exactly, you pay for it. You do what you want with it. But it's more fun for me to try and conform to making it lore accurate, but at the same time as weird as possible.
Yeah.
So I find fun in that. If you
love
find fun in painting your emperor's children different colors of the rainbow, you go for it.
I mean,
Because at the same time, like they also wear garish color. Like, and our friend said, like, you don't want to paint each marine emperor's children a different color. And I'm like, it would be lore accurate if I did, probably,
yeah,
because it would be so hard on the eyes. And I'm like, that's them.
Yeah.
That's what they do.
they are hard on the eyes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But no, that is essentially it. You have some high players. You've got Eidolon, going to save his book for another time when his mini eventually comes out. We've got Fabius Bile. His mini's been out. His mini was out first. He was the first Emperor's Children mini released anytime soon. So he's already out. But I'm going to finish off his trilogy and his books. And if you want to know more about him, please let me know, and you let me know too.
Oh yeah, I definitely do want to. I think after we do all this excess, we may have to look at. We've done a lot of trader and
No, we haven't.
loyalist.
This is our first Trader Marine. This is our first Trader Lord.
I mean,
except for Abaddon and Horus, but like
we
barely.
haven't really done a lot on Xenos.
Xenos or anything else. So yeah,
Necron.
we gotta spin those plates.
Yeah, which I'm so looking forward to speaking about, because we've spoken little bits and pieces inside and outside of the podcast. Like, I'm looking forward to learning about the collector dude, the Necron.
Trazen.
Yeah.
The Necrons and Trazen are next.
He sounds so interesting.
Very interesting.
Just from like the things that we've spoken about.
Is that what you want the next one to be about?
I kind of think so.
Okay.
I mean,
So is what we're going to do next is we're going to do the timeline episodes. We're going to do 40K, the whole timeline,
yeah,
condensed,
condensed.
and then Horus Heresy.
Try and get your brain to condense all that
Yeah.
information.
Oh no, I can do it. I just want to make sure you understand the sequence of events as to what happened.
Yeah.
And try and do it within like 20 minutes as part of like a challenge.
And it's probably good for people that are wanting like a quick, just like, okay, just tell me the basics, especially if they're getting into Warhammer. Like we've got
It's intimidating.
a friend of ours that's just coming into Warhammer. He's only been in it for a year, but it would be good to do like this is the rough cut of like what 40K is.
Yeah.
Like condensed down. Like we're going to leave a lot of bits out because we'll explain them in their own podcast, but just get like a brief summary of Horus Heresy into 40K.
Yeah.
And then maybe Necrons.
Yeah, well, I'm thinking 40K condensed, like
Yep.
the whole history. Try and condense that down to like a 20-minute video and then keep it exactly on 20 minutes. I believe I can do it. You just got to make sure you sit there and absorb the information, all right?
Okay. In that 20 minutes, I will be quiet because
No, that's all good. I don't want you to be quiet, but at the same time, it might be good for the challenge.
Yep.
And then Horus Heresy,
Yep.
just because there's a lot of people that are getting into the new tabletop version of Horus Heresy.
And
And
you've-
a lot of
you've
people
bought-
just only care about the Primarchs.
Yeah, and you've bought the Horus Heresy box.
Age of
which we
Darkness
did
unboxing.
We did an unboxing of that, or you did an unboxing of that. So it just seems like Warhammer in general is getting like this like resurgence, like this big,
It's getting traction. Yeah.
yeah, this like big boom.
Thanks, Henry.
Yeah, lady Cav.
But is there anything else you want to know more about Emperor's Children that I might be able to answer? Like, do you have any questions? Like, there was a lot of information I threw at you.
The only thing I would ask is where would you start? So, Fulgrim book would be like to learn about Fulgrim. But what book would you recommend people read if they wanted to, say, learn about like the army themselves, like the actual Emperor's Children? So not so much the Primarch.
If the problem is that with the Primarchs and Space Marine Legions is that the Primarchs do inform the Legion. So if you go backwards and you go Legion then Primarch, it may not make sense depending on which one you choose.
No,
So
I mean if
so I
you've
would-
read like Fulgrim.
So if you've read Fulgrim
got-
and then you've read his Primarch book, which I recommend, The Palatine Phoenix, is I would recommend Renegade's Lord of Excess because it literally does not have, like, it mentions the Primarch, but it doesn't actually have him in it. And it's about how a normal Emperor's Children crew would operate and how they would have to structure things for them to be successful. And on top of that, just like the inner workings of how like they're afraid to like each other over,
Yep.
trying to become like the leader,
Yep.
because they all have that aspiration of expectation.
Yep.
And then how some are just like okay with being a noise marine trying to find the Song of Slaanesh.
Yeah. Okay.
Although one tidbit I forgot to mention is that that's the reason his name, Fulgrim's nickname is the Phoenician. And the reason why that is because on Chemos and with the Legion, he, like a phoenix, he brought them back to life. I forgot to mention that. I noted myself.
There is so much, like, that is one thing that I've learned about Warhammer, is that there is so much information out there. You can get so, like if you have an army that you like, then you could dive so deep into their lore, and there's a lot there.
Unless you're a Votann player.
I mean, there's obviously going to be some armies that...
The Votann don't have much. They've only just got their book. But at the same time, like, if you're becoming a Space Marine player, so much lore.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
So
like,
much if you're a Space Marine. Even if you're an Imperium fan, you still have, like, all the Sisters of Battle, Custodes, and then the Imperium Guard. They've got books for days.
yeah.
Necrons have got 5 books.
Yeah, there's
4,
still,
I think, maybe.
There's still a lot that you can get into, and whereas we're trying to cover all of them. It's a lot.
Eldar, I think, have only, like, 3. I could be wrong. Let me know if I'm wrong in the comments, but I'm not sure. I'm actually probably not that far off.
Yeah. But okay, so what was that? The
Renegade's Lord of Excess. It follows Xantine Xanatine, I think I'm saying it wrong, and how his strive through leadership. He actually has a Slaaneshi demon within him, and they come like through like a symbiotic sort of relationship. But then it also explains how that kind of possession works. So I would recommend that book if you just wanted like a solo story that doesn't that's not connected to the larger storyline, but at the same time,
information.
Good information, and also a really good story.
Yeah.
It's a genuinely good book. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
And does that include the parts where the Noise Marines gets created, like what we were just speaking about?
No. So if you want to read about the Noise Marines being created, then the Fulgrim book from the Horus Heresy is the best one to go.
Okay.
That one is about how they all got corrupted and the inner workings of how the Legion operated. So I'll always recommend that book, his Primarch book, and then anything after that.
Go from that.
You could do Fabius Bile books as well, and they also feature a lot of the inner workings of the Emperor's Children and shows off characters quite well.
Perfect. Okay.
Yeah, we're going to leave it there. Thank you very much for putting up with us, guys. Please like and subscribe.
Also, want to thank again our sponsors,
Gamers Village.
Gamers Village. Please go check them out. They really help us out. They helped us get all this audio equipment. We'll put their website and the Instagram and Facebook and all that stuff in the description.
All that information will be in the description below.
Yep.
Please show them some love. They've shown us a lot of love. So keep that love going. But also support your local. Support them. I know that's a bit of a hypocritical statement, but try, please.
Yeah. No, they've also said that as well to us. Like, your local. Like,
local comes first,
It keeps the
community going.
Keeps the community going.
Yeah.
And
that's pretty much it.
Yeah, Discord. We have a Discord. Put any like.
We're usually pretty frequent in there. I'm usually in there all the time.
I'm way too in there. I'm always in there.
Giggity.
So. Discord. We are going to try and do a Q&A soon. We want to get some like
put that in the videos idea part of the Discord.
Yeah, or in the comments of the YouTube. If there's any like specific questions.
If I've messed up anything, or if there's anything that I didn't mention about Emperor's Children, genuinely, let me know.
We read all the comments.
Unlike other YouTubers, I'm not in the interest of spreading misinformation. I genuinely want not to be an authority on the information, but I want to make sure that I'm giving good information that people can actually latch onto and not have to be worried about, like, oh, but he said this and he was wrong about. He was dead set wrong. Like, I hate that.
Yeah.
Because I've had that happen to me where I've believed in something because a YouTuber said it or a podcaster said it, and I'm like, yeah, he said this part of a lore channel. I should probably believe the lore channel, and then I hated them afterwards because they weren't truthful.
We're not a lore channel. We're just a.
I know we're not a lore channel either, but at the same time, like if I'm talking, giving you the story time,
Yeah.
and then giving you guys the narrative of it all, I at least want to be 90% accurate.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Yeah. We'll read it anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, thanks for watching and subscribing and liking.
Thanks for all the fish.
Yes, 42.
I'm glad you got that reference.
I knew all about it.
Have a good day, everybody.
Yeah. See you in the next episode. Bye. Pigeons.
For the glory of chaos!